This infamous drawing from 1909 is said to depict French archaeologist Marcellin Boule's thoughts on Neanderthals, which he explained in his book Les Hommes Fossiles, published in 1920. Regarding the intelligence of Neanderthal man, he wrote, "The probable absence of all traces of aesthetic or moral concerns, which fits well with the brutal aspect of his vigorous and heavy body, and his bony head with robust jaws, where the predominance of purely vegetative or bestial functions over cerebral functions is confirmed." In short, he echoed an early anthropologist who wrote that darkness characterized the being to which the fossil belonged, and the thoughts and desires that once dwelt within it never soared beyond those of the brute. Poor Homo neanderthalensis! Surely no other human group has faced so many derogatory slurs and insults as our big-headed cousins from the Stone Age. This early representative of a lineage whose brain was slightly larger than our own has been subjected to a variety of pathological and evolutionary insults. The final blow is the widely held belief that, due to anatomical differences and a lack of artwork, Neanderthals were also mute, or babbling away with a severely limited set of phonemes. The movie Quest for Fire even had them taking their women from behind, until modern people gave them some copulatory finesse, surely a gift as good as fire. These extinct human relatives have long been portrayed as brutish and dumb. This concept is frequently attributed to paleontologist Marcellin Boule, who published a detailed analysis of a Neanderthal skeleton in the early 20th century. According to the conventional historical narrative, Boule made a mistake in his analysis, leading to the perception that Neanderthals were brutish. This video questions the narrative of Boule's error, arguing that the brutish Neanderthal concept originated much earlier in the history of Neanderthal research and was, in fact, an invention of newspaper and magazine writers and artists. If you look up the old man of La Chapelle aux Saints on websites such as Wikipedia or the Smithsonian, you will almost always find the statement that Marcellin Boule reconstructed the old Neanderthal as stooped and forward-leaning with a shuffling gait, a reconstruction that would prevail for the next 60 years, as all Neanderthals were depicted as primitive and stooped until recently. If you search for Marcellin Boule Neanderthal reconstruction, you will find hundreds of thumbnails of bow-legged, bent-over Neanderthals, and Boule is blamed for each and every one of them. Even the Smithsonian Human Origins website, which features yet another photograph of the famous skull, accuses Boule of misrepresenting Neanderthals. Czech artist František Kupka's drawing of a Neanderthal, which appeared in L'Illustration in Paris in February 1909, and again in the Illustrated London News shortly thereafter, was widely reproduced, and it was usually treated as Boule's own reconstruction. But there is no documentation indicating that Boule was responsible for Kupka's drawing. In fact, Kupka made a very similar drawing a few years before he drew the La Chapelle Neanderthal, so this creature was a figment of the artist's imagination and not an anatomically correct drawing. The only image in Boule's study that addresses Neanderthal posture is a simple drawing of a standing La Chapelle skeleton, which is compared to that of an Aboriginal Australian. In this drawing, the Neanderthal is slightly stooped, with slightly bowed legs, but it does not resemble the primitive half-human depicted by Kupka. Indeed, the depictions of Neanderthals, which put him in a gorilla-like posture, go far beyond what Boule proposed. Furthermore, it is often said that Boule misrepresented Neanderthals as having a gorilla-like big toe, which was abnormally elongated and divergent from the rest of the foot. However, if you read his book, he actually compares the toe to a Cro-Magnon skeleton and living modern humans, and never compares Neanderthals to gorillas. So, Boule was correct in stating that this particular Neanderthal had a divergent big toe and a stooped posture because this specimen suffered from degenerative bone disease. Boule's work is extremely thorough and highly scientific, especially when compared to other work from his time. Although Boule did believe that Neanderthals were simple-minded due to their relatively simple stone tools, as far as the evidence shows, his analysis of their skeletal morphology was highly accurate. Therefore, if anyone is to blame for the brutish image of the Neanderthal, it should be Kupka and the American and British archaeologists who continue to misrepresent Boule's scientific work. Boule spent several chapters of his books, published in 1915 and 1923, disassembling the Piltdown Man discovery, which he agreed was a modern human skull fused with a chimpanzee jawbone. He also debunked what the British referred to as stone tools, which were actually naturally broken rocks. As a result, there was no love lost between Boule and British archaeology, which may have led to the British attempting to discredit Boule by accusing him of perpetuating the brutish Neanderthal stereotype. On August 3, 1908, 3 Catholic priests discovered a human-like skeleton from prehistoric times in a cave at La Chapelle-aux-Saints in France. The fact that the find was made by a priest has some parallels to Piltdown Man. La Chapelle-aux-Saints is located close to Lascaux, the site of the famous cave paintings discovered in 1940. The skeleton, which appeared to have been buried, was mostly complete, and, unusual for the time, photographs were taken of the find prior to excavation, from which the discovery site was recreated. The priests were friends with Marcellin Boule, director of Paris's Institute of Human Paleontology, and gave him the skeleton. Boule announced the discovery at a meeting of the Paris Academy of Sciences later that year, and he spent several years researching the remains before publishing a lengthy study in 1911. The skeleton of the Old Man of La Chapelle was discovered was the first relatively complete skeleton of a Neanderthal individual found by scientists. This skeleton was buried in the limestone bedrock of a small cave near La Chapelle-aux-Saints, France, and includes the skull, jaw, most of the vertebrae, several ribs, the majority of the long bones of his arms and legs, as well as some of the smaller bones of his hands and feet. The well-preserved skull displays Homo neanderthalensis's characteristic low, receding forehead, protruding mid-face, and heavy brow ridges. Boule determined that the Old Man of La Chapelle-aux-Saints, as he would be called, was a Neanderthal who had lived to be about 40 to 50 years of age, had lost most of his teeth, and died from a blow to the head. Several other Neanderthal skulls had been discovered since the original Neanderthal was unearthed in 1856, but the find at La Chapelle was significant because it led scientists to believe he was quite old when he died, as bone had regrown along the gums, where he had lost several teeth, possibly decades before. In fact, he lacked so many teeth that it's possible he needed his food ground down before he could eat it. Other Neanderthals in his social group may have helped him in his final years. La Chapelle-aux-Saints I had a number of incisors, canines and premolars in place, indicating that he was able to chew his food. Despite the fact that he had lost many of his teeth, which showed signs of healing, some researchers suggested that the Old Man would have needed someone to process his food for him. The La Chapelle site is the most convincing example of a possible Neanderthal deliberate burial, but it, like all claimed Neanderthal burials, is still considered controversial. This Neanderthal, like several others we will discuss, was buried in the fetal position. The most spectacular discovery was that of a very well-preserved skeleton of an adult Neanderthal man who appears to have been intentionally buried in a rectangular pit in the cave. This discovery sparked debate about whether burials existed during the Mousterian period, also known as Neanderthals period. Arguments for the existence of a tomb included the body's sleeping position and the funeral gifts associated with the pit, such as stone tools and animal bones. Some archaeologists even believe the La Chapelle-aux-Saints cave was not used as a habitat for daily life, but rather for funerals. 1 year after the discovery of the La Chapelle Neanderthal, excavations at the La Ferracie rock shelter in the Dordogne Valley, France, yielded the remains of an adult male and an adult female, providing scientists with the first evidence of sexual dimorphism in Neanderthals. The remains of the child and infant individuals also help scientists understand the growth rates of Neanderthal children. A total of 8 Neanderthal individuals, including adults, children, infants and 2 fetuses buried in the fetal position. In 1909, the largest and most complete Neanderthal skull ever discovered was found at La Ferracie, and the fossil has been noted to represent many transitional characteristics to modern humans. The skeleton of an adult male has many of the typical Neanderthal characteristics, such as a low, sloping forehead and a large nasal opening. His teeth, which are all preserved, are heavily worn, indicating that he was an older individual at the time of his death. His front incisors show a slanted wear that does not occur from chewing. 1. The reconstruction of the La Chapelle-aux-Saints Neanderthal skeleton by the artist Kupka, which depicted the species as stooped, brutish creatures, was debunked by the discovery of Laferrassi's leg and foot bones, which proved unequivocally that Neanderthals walked upright and with a gait very similar to modern humans. What's more, Boule actually used the Laferrassi fossil as a sample in comparison to the La Chapelle-aux-Saints skeleton. Moreover, the Laferrassi remains have proved to be beneficial in studying evolution over time. Furthermore, he was a toolmaker, fashioning stone implements like those already found in the cave of Le Moustier and called Mousterian tools. The Neanderthal skeleton known as Le Moustier is thought to be around 45,000 years old. He was buried in the fetal positio, with his head on the flat rock and surrounded by several stone tools. The skull has a big nasal cavity and a slightly less developed brow ridge and occipital bun, as would be expected in a young Neanderthal. After its discovery, the skull was disassembled, cast and rebuilt at least 4 times. During this procedure, the skull sustained significant damage. For example, a dentist shattered the jawbone to reach the teeth. The skull is now missing numerous sections, with the teeth bonded in the incorrect place, and has been dipped in glue, varnished and painted with plaster. As a result, its scientific value is significantly reduced. Shanidar III was a 40 to 50-year-old male, around the same age as La Chapelle man, and also buried in the fetal position with his head on a flat rock and associated with several stone tools. A wound to the left 9th rib suggests that the individual died of complications from a stab wound by a sharp implement. Bone growth around the wound indicates that Shanidar III lived for at least several weeks after the injury with the object still embedded. The angle of the wound rules out self-infliction, but is consistent with an accidental or purposeful stabbing. This would be the earliest example of interpersonal conflict in the human fossil record, and the only such example among Neanderthals. The presence of early modern humans, possibly armed with projectile weapons, in Western Asia around the same time, has been taken to imply that this injury may have resulted from interspecies conflict. In summary, the idea that Neanderthals were brutish and unintelligent gorilla-like creatures is often traced back to Marcellin Boule, the French paleontologist who examined the Old Man of La Chapelle specimen in the early 20th century. However, as we have discussed, a re-examination of the facts deconstructs the narrative of Boule's era, while providing a new perspective on Neanderthals today. It was not the French who regarded Neanderthals as gorilla-like creatures. It was the British who were very jealous of French researchers, to the point that they created their own fossil man, who they called Piltdown Man, who for more than 40 years made a monkey out of British scientists.